connection and empathy as a cure. This is my statement, kind of my soapbox that I get on sometimes, that the responsibility should not be placed on our children, especially young children, to create a culture of connection for themselves or to always remember to have empathy for others. It is our responsibility as adults to create and maintain a culture in our homes, in our schools, and communities that teach children to makes empathy and vulnerability safe. So, thoughts about that? We'll talk in some of the other slides about what that could look like.
I think that you see it all the time where sort of a double standard, parent can get in the stands with their kids on the field and fight with the opposing parent over, the better player or whatever it is. Fight breaks out, and if they don't, they don't want that same. So it's what we role model. It's really what I'm saying.
There's a lot of it that is what we role model. And again, what that looks like is different depending on the specific kind of context that it's playing out in.
I mean, the thing that you said that was really striking to me in the prior slide was how everyone has moments of insecurity or whatever. They have a dream, they have this, something new, but the ability to be able to talk about that and sort of get support,
Yeah.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is for all of us at all ages in so many ways. And part of where this kind of statement came from for me is I was looking at all the different kinds of bullying interventions and programs that are out there, is so much of it places the responsibility on the kids to know what to say in that moment when they're being picked on and have that courage come somehow from within themselves. And I don't know about you all, but when I was 10 years old, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to hide or figure out what I needed to do to be accepted. It's really extraordinary to have a kid at really any age that's going to stand there alone and say, don't be mean to me, or quit picking on my friend, or that's not okay. I mean, really being able to name that in the moment, it's a little safer to go talk to the teacher kind of on the side, and I'm a little bit worried about this. It's still safer, hopefully, to go home afterwards and talk to parents about what they saw and what happened. And then how that plays out has all sorts of X factors in it as far as parents calling each other and teachers and school counselors and all sorts of situations. But I think the more we put that weight on our kids to be the ones that fix it all the time, it's really unfair to them and setting them up to feel a sense of shame in themselves because I didn't do it. And I think the more we're able to step back and say, okay, what happened between these kids in the first place that this one felt like they needed to push this other one around? Or how are these kids that are forming this kind of coalition, who's the leader here, and how can we kind of give them a different kind of sense of worthiness in themselves that doesn't have to come from at the expense of somebody else? And really being able to address that from a different perspective. And I think it really can't be overstated how much empathy plays a role in this, because, and one of the things that I'll say a little bit more about this in a minute, but even kids that can have empathy connection to an animal. I have a dog that I'm beginning to train to do animal-assisted therapy. And in some of the research, even around pet-assisted therapy or animal-assisted therapy, for kids to be able to really learn how to read the signals of a dog or a horse, or have some sort of connection where they care about how somebody or something else feels, that's really shifting and how they see themselves, and you can't go back. Once I'm able to see in somebody else's eyes that what I'm doing is hurting them and feel a true sense of empathy for that, I can't do it anymore.
I have a therapy question for you. How do you, frequently in behavioral health, kids come in for therapy. So I work in clarity, so I see that all the time. And we do the family therapy. And frequently the parent is the ones who are hurting, maybe more so than the kids. And so when you have the session, you bring up some of the issues to sort of like sort of shared responsibility. You'll get arms folded up like, well, they just need to sort of get it together, or I was there, so. How do you help to sort of, pass the baton of, because that's critical in kid being healthy in the long run.
One of the things that I personally recognize as a struggle for me as a therapist is when I see those parents, part of me just wants to get something and start hitting them over the head. But I also know that that's going to be so counterproductive because it just triggers their own shame and their own shutdown. Because I know from the parents that I've worked with over the years that there's no greater sense of shame and feeling totally powerless and helpless to not know what to do with your child. And by the time they're at clarity, they're really feeling awful. And so depending on their personality and their own coping styles, it's really easy for them to just go into that shutdown, avoidant, I can't let anything else in. And here's one more person telling me how horrible of a parent I am. It's not the first time. So I think the way that I get sometimes to have success with those parents is really be about an empathetic connection with them first. Unfortunately, and I know in a lot of inpatient settings, you don't have time and opportunity for that. But looking for that outpatient connection of where can I connect this parent to a place where it's not going to just be somebody beating them over the head and telling them how horrible they are. Because we recognize as parents, I can't give my child what I don't have for me. If I want my child to have a sense of confidence in themselves and a sense of worthiness, and I feel like crap myself, and I'm depressed and I can't hardly get myself out of bed, then that's not going to happen. So, finding some connection with that parent of, we're going to take care of you.
Kind of along those lines, the other day I was thinking how it's weird we don't have like emotional health class in schools growing up. It amazes me how much emotional intelligence I learned as an adult. And as a kid, no one directly told me. I had great parents, but I don't even know if they knew until later on. And I feel like it would fix so many things, not everything, but if they had, we have physical education, why not have mental education?
It could be a part of health class very easily. And I think in some places it is more and more about emotional intelligence and empathetic, being able to take the other person's perspective. So much of that social skill. And one of the exercises I do, even going back to the book, the How Full Is Your Bucket, you can read that with kids, or any kind of book with kids where there's multiple characters, and talk about, well, how does this person feel? How does that person feel? Oh, you mean they don't feel the same thing in the same situation? Wow, okay, there's different ways that different people can experience something. And have that kind of perspective-taking exercise. And again, in the child development literature, that your ability to take the perspective of another person and recognize that it could be different from your own, ideally happens around 4, but sometimes it's not a strength that is present for kids later on, or somehow they've internalized this narrative that it's somehow a weakness in me if I care about what the other person thinks. I might know intuitively that the other person feels differently, but I see it as a weakness in myself if I let myself care. And I think that's in particular a place where we really fail in how we socialize boys. That if me acknowledging my emotional experience and acknowledging that I feel bad about how somebody else feels, if that makes me a wimp, or worse, fill in the words there, then that sense of shame and vulnerability and not feeling connected to this group that I want to belong to is really, really hard.